Hello everyone. Thanks for joining us for this webinar. We have Ravi Trivedi and Nicholas here. Ravi Trivedi is the founder of Push Engage. Yeah. Ravi Trivedi, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Sharon. Welcome, everyone. It's my pleasure to have a guest speaker like Nicholas here. We'll get to his. Just to quickly give you a 60-second summary of what Push Engage does for some of you who don't know us. We are a leading platform for web push notifications with customers in 150 countries. We do 5 to 6 billion web push notifications a month, and we have several happy customers, several e-commerce content sites use us, and the use case is to increase engagement and repeat visitors. With that being said, I'll get started. We have a poll for all of you. Please feel free to enter your input so we can personalize. And the questions are going to be in the questions tab. Please feel free to answer the go ahead with your questions in there. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce Nicholas. Nicholas is a growth marketing consultant who helps brands turn web visitors into leads and customers using high converting landing pages. He's the founder of Growth Marketer and Landing Page School and the host of 3 podcasts. Again, we have heard him speak in several conferences, and he's an amazing speaker. So thanks for being here, Nicholas. Over to you. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you, Ravi. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining me. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be talking about landing pages. So let me switch over to the slides here. And we're going to do Q&A at the end. But if there are any questions as we go through, please let me know. I see somebody says I can't hear anything. Ravi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Okay, good. So we got the audio working. So, okay. And everyone can see my slides, right? Perfect. Okay. So what we're going to be talking about are the 5 behind-the-scenes secrets to landing page success in 2020 and beyond. I'll be sharing what you need to know to convert more of your website visitors into leads and customers. So why don't we jump right in? I want you to imagine if you were able to convert more of your website visitors into leads and customers. And here's the important part: without spending more on ads or SEO. Because something I see happen all the time is people invest a whole bunch of money in Facebook ads, Google ads, search engine optimization, and they send that traffic, those people, to pages that are just not optimized. And if you can just tweak that optimization, you can get those pages that you're sending people to convert at a higher rate, then you can maximize your ad spend or your SEO efforts or your email marketing efforts in a way where you don't have to keep spending more and more and more on the traffic. You're going to be converting more of that traffic into leads and customers. So that's what I want to teach you today. I want to show you some strategies that have worked for me over the past 11 years that I've been doing digital marketing and really help you get those pages to convert. So in a nutshell, I'm going to be revealing what the highest converting landing pages have in common and how you can mirror this formula to turn more of your website visitors into leads and customers. And of course, like I said, we'll have Q&A at the end, but if there are any questions that come up, feel free to put them in the questions tab. I'll be monitoring that, and it's no problem at all to address the question, because I think the best value out of these types of webinars is in the Q&A and in the interactions that we can have. So real quickly about me, as Ravi said, I'm the founder of Earnworthy, which is a marketing consultancy. We specialize in basically doing everything we're talking about here, optimizing landing pages. We work a lot with a platform called Unbounce. We're Unbounce agency partners, and we're based in Boca Raton, Florida, in the States. And then a more recent venture that I started is called growthmarketer.co. And this is sort of the training arm of Earnworthy, where we teach people who don't necessarily want us to do it, but we teach you how to convert customers using high converting landing pages. And I have over 11 years of digital marketing experience. I've managed over $4.2 million of ad spend on Facebook and Google. And I've reviewed, designed, or optimized over 2,000 landing pages in about the last 5 years. But enough about me. So we're talking about landing pages. And an important distinction to make is really the way I see it is when it comes to digital marketing, there's really 2 different paths you can go down. You can talk about e-commerce or you can talk about lead generation. And the good thing is what I'm going to be sharing applies to both. So it's going to apply whether you are working on an e-commerce landing page or working more in the lead generation space, maybe trying to generate leads for a client or for your own business, or try to promote a lead magnet to build an email list. So the strategies I talk about will work equally no matter what side of the fence you're on. I know there's a lot of blurring of the lines these days between e-com and lead gen. So the first question I always get asked is, what is a landing page? And I want this to be more of an advanced presentation, so I'm not going to cover too much of the very basics, but this is actually a really important question because it ties into secret number one. So there's 5 secrets I'll be sharing with you in this webinar. And the first one is you need to know the true purpose of a landing page. What is a landing page? And so that's going to help us answer that first question of what is a landing page. So this is my definition of a landing page. It's an independent, campaign-specific destination that persuades a member of a target audience to take one clearly defined action. Now, I know that sounds like a very complicated definition, but it's actually really important to understand this because everything else we cover on this webinar is going to make a lot more sense once we really break apart this definition. So the parts in blue, I'm going to cover those real quickly one by one. So first of all, a landing page is independent. What this means is that it's independent from your website, or it could be independent from your website. It doesn't have to be built on your website. In fact, a lot of the clients we work with these days don't even have a traditional website anymore. As surprising as that sounds, they have just a collection of landing pages. They run a lot of paid traffic, and they don't necessarily need to have that traditional website architecture that you would think of with like a homepage and all that stuff. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have that. It's certainly something, you know, that's a benefit to every business to have a website for SEO and for organic reach. But the beauty of landing pages is you can get something up and running quickly in an sort of an isolated environment without needing to worry about building an entire website. And I'll show you some tools later on that can help you do that. Second of all, the idea behind landing pages is that they're campaign specific, meaning you don't want to just build a landing page for the sake of a landing page. You want to have a campaign objective in mind. The campaign objective could be to get more subscribers on your email list, to promote a lead magnet, to get more consultations, to get people to call your business, to purchase a product, whatever it may be. You want to have a campaign goal. And typically, if you're using a landing page for like a paid media campaign like Google ads or Facebook ads or something like that, it's very, very isolated. Maybe it's you're promoting a product for spring or summer or whatever. So you have a campaign objective in mind, and that's going to help you customize that landing page. Next up, landing pages are built for a member of a target audience. And all this really means is that you don't want to build a landing page for the entire world. You want to really hone in on who is your target audience. Who do you want to speak to when they visit that landing page? And so the better you can do at identifying your target audience, the more relevant the experience will be. And relevancy is such an important part to get people to convert. Now, there's a lot that we could go into here, but obviously in the interest of time, we don't have enough time to talk about personas and customer avatars and all that stuff, but there's a lot of really good resources out there. I'm sure there's some great content on the Push Engage blog, and also HubSpot is a great source of info for anything to do with like persona development. They have like a little persona building tool, but it's really important to understand who your target audience is before you go down this path of building a landing page. And last up, landing pages should help the visitor take one clearly defined action. You don't want too many different things going on. And I'm going to show you an example of this in a moment. But the idea here is that landing pages are very focused. And this is probably the biggest difference between a landing page and maybe a home page, is that with a landing page, there's one specific thing you want people to do, whether it be to buy a product, click a button, call a phone number, fill out a form, whatever the case may be. So that is the definition. It's an independent campaign-specific destination that persuades a member of a target audience to take one clearly defined action. And to give you a quick idea of like what a landing page could look like, this is an example from Shopify. I'm sure we all have heard of Shopify. This is a page that they use with some of their paid advertising campaigns. And of course, this is just what we would call the above the fold portion of the page. And you can see how it's very, very minimalistic. It's got one objective: to start a free trial. It's talking to a very specific audience of maybe business owners, because it says here it's trusted by over 800,000 businesses worldwide. It has a very clear headline. It's very simple. And so whenever I'm showing this and explaining this definition, people ask, well, how are landing pages different from home pages? And so I wanted to show you, using the Shopify example, the difference between one of Shopify's landing pages, which is on the right, and Shopify's homepage, which is on the left. And so the first thing you'll probably notice is that the homepage is much, much longer. It's like 2/3 longer than the landing page. And I wouldn't say that this is always the case, that landing pages are always shorter than a traditional website homepage or something like that. But I would say in most cases, most modern landing pages can be relatively shorter because they're focusing in on one target audience, one call to action, they're campaign focused. So they don't need to be as long-winded. And if we zoom in to the top portion of the website homepage for Shopify, the other thing you'll notice are all the different things you can interact with. So I put red boxes around them. So I think there's like 13 different things here that you can do if you visit the Shopify homepage. And I'm sure it's the same for your homepage or my homepage or whatever homepage you go to. There's a lot of different interaction points. And this is necessary because when someone visits your homepage, you don't necessarily know why they're there. You don't know what they really want to do. Do they want to start a free trial? Do they want to learn more, see your pricing, log in, learn about the company, read your blog? There's all these different things they could potentially do. And so you have to give all of these different options. And there's nothing wrong with that for a homepage. But with a landing page, again, you can be very, very focused because you know who your target audience is. You know you're trying to focus on one specific campaign objective, and you have one clear call to action. So here, again, you see the Shopify landing page, and there's literally one thing you can do, which is to start a free trial. So the takeaway from secret number 1 is that by understanding the true purpose of a landing page, you can create an experience for your visitors that compels them to take action now. And that's the key. You want them to get moving forward and taking action because that's how you're going to convert them from being just a visitor to being either a lead or a customer. So I hope everyone is following along and enjoying this. Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you have questions. But we're going to roll right into secret number 2 because we have a lot to cover. So secret number 2 is that the highest converting landing pages answer these 7 questions. And so before I show you the 7 questions, I want to give you a quick story about how I learned about landing pages and how many of you probably learned about landing pages too. If you Google landing pages on any type of blog, you might find blogs that have images like this, where they teach how to build a landing page by showing you all these different building blocks. And they treat it almost like Legos, where you have the headline block and you have the call to action block and you have testimonials and trust logos and forms and images. And it's sort of like, hey, you should just piece together all these different building blocks and voila, you have a landing page. And that's how I learned about it. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that approach, but I think there's a better way to think about landing pages. So the idea here is don't think of landing pages as a collection of elements or blocks. Instead, think about the questions that people have as they visit your landing page, because every element or every block is meant to serve a purpose, right? We don't put a testimonial on a landing page just because we want to put a testimonial on a landing page. We put it because it answers a specific question the visitor has, which is what I would call the trust question. Can I trust it? Is this page trustworthy? Is this company trustworthy? So that's what I'm getting at. If you take it a step further and look beyond the elements of a landing page and look at the questions and the psychological motivations that people have as they visit, that's going to help you get them to take action. So these are the 7 questions that we came up with over the last, I would say, 3 years. We isolated down the 7 questions that we believe every landing page should try to answer for the visitor, because these are the conscious and subconscious questions that people may have as they visit. So number 1, the clarity question says, do I quickly understand the big idea? So as someone lands on your page, they want to know right away, is this something that can help me, right? They want to understand, what is the big idea that's going on here? What is this all about? The second question is the relevance question. Can it help me? The third question is, do I like it? We're talking about affinity, the design of the page, the design of the brand, that type of thing. It's this instant connection people have with either seeing something that looks like a nice, aesthetically pleasing design versus something that kind of looks maybe a little sketchy. Number 4, has it helped others? This is the influence question. And we were talking about social proof a moment ago. And so going back to the example with Testimonials, that's a great way to convey social proof and to show how your product or service or offer has helped someone else. And that's really, really important these days. And then number 5 is the trust question. Do I trust it? People want to see, is this page trustworthy? Do they have any type of connection with other brands that I trust? Is the page secure? That type of stuff. It's really important to answer the trust question. Then you have question number 6. Is there something special about it? I call this the relevance question. And the relevance question is, the number 6 is the question that talks about the advantage, the unique advantage that your landing pages have. So can you show how you are different from some of your competitors? And then finally, number 7 is the action question. You want to make sure people know what is the next action they need to take. That's going to be really, really important. Okay, so what I'll do, since there's 7 questions, there's a lot to get through. We're not going to have time to get through all 7 questions of this framework here. So I'm going to cover the first 3 real quick, and then we're going to move on to some of the other secrets, because there's a lot to cover here. And of course, if anyone has any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. Let's see, we have a question from Rakesh. I want to request a demo on the same page and also get a sign up. How should I have these 2 CTAs on my page? That's a really good question. So I would say you want to focus on one of them. You want one to be your primary call to action, and then you can have a secondary call to action. Maybe in many of your cases, the secondary call to action is a push engage notification, right? Or maybe that is your primary. But I would say at a minimum, you always want to focus on one and have the other one be less prominent. Because if you give people 2 very prominent choices on your landing page, it's going to create something called the paradox of choice, which is just going to confuse them and make it more difficult for them to decide what action to take. And Ria asks, what is the significance of phone numbers on a landing page? Phone numbers can be great if you are able to quickly deal with them and answer them. I hear horror stories of companies that put a phone number on their page, and when the customer calls, it goes to voicemail, and you've just lost that sale. So make sure if you're using a phone number on your page that it's either going to a call center or maybe after hours you have some way of handling that. But just having a phone number is going to increase the credibility. So it ties back to the trust question, because when I see a phone number on a page, that means, hey, there's a real company behind it. So there's a second goal of having a phone number on a page. It builds the credibility with the website. So I'm going to get to the clarity question. We'll try to get to some of the other questions in the chat as we go on. But the clarity question, this is all about the big idea on your landing page. What is the number one thing you want people to know right away about this page? And so I'm going to give you a quick example. This is a bad example. This is a company that sells shoes. Imagine you landed on this page. There's no big idea. There's no headline. All you see are a bunch of links. There's something that says sort, color, size, filter. There's all this white space above the, in this portion of the page. And then you have these images, which are really zoomed in. It doesn't really tell me anything. So there's no big idea here. So I would say this is probably not the best example to build when you're trying to convey the big idea. Now I'll give you a good example. This is from a company called HelloFresh. And even if you didn't read the text, you automatically know this has something to do with cooking. When you look at the logo, you know it has something to do with maybe fresh food. You know what they want you to do. They want you to get started because you have that button right there. And then when you read the headline, it says cooking as easy as eating. So it's very clear. This has something to do with being able to maybe cook at home or home delivery. Then you see something to do with shipping. So you're starting to put together that big idea. And that's the thought process that a lot of people have as they visit a landing page. They're going to sort of interpret all these different elements that are usually above the fold real quickly to get a quick impression of what they need to do next or what this page is all about. So that's, I would say, a good example. So moving on to the second question in the 7-question framework, the relevance question. Can it specifically help me? People want to know what's in it for them. You may have heard the expression WIFM, W-I-I-F-M. What's in it for me? The truth is, when people visit your landing page, they're selfish. They don't necessarily care about, I started the company 10 years ago and this is the story we had. They care about what's in it for me. How can you help them right away? So again, I'll give you a bad example. This is a real page. I blurred out the logo here so that we could just focus on what's going on there. But basically, what I want to highlight are the phrases on this page where they're using talk about them. So it's very self-centered talk. So they're talking about us, or we manage, or we are, or our services. And so the problem with this type of language is it's very self-serving and it doesn't tell the visitor what's in it for them. So now it's impossible to completely remove this kind of language, but what I recommend you do is try to reword the phrases on your page to talk about the visitor. So go through your landing pages, and anything that mentions we are or us or our services, say things like, this is how we help you, right? Or the benefit you're going to get from our services. And so just repositioning that little bit with just a change of phrase can make a huge difference. And I'll give you a good example of this. This is a company called Topology. They create custom eyewear for companies, for individuals. And you can see from their headline, it says, this is eyewear tailored to you, right? And it even looks very personal because it has that logo up in the top that says made for Stephanie. So it's very much about the visitor. Moving on to the affinity question, do I like it? This is a very difficult question to answer for the visitors because everyone has a different idea of what they like in terms of design or preferences. So it's not as clear cut as some of the others, but it's important because this is a real conversation I had. And I have conversations like this all the time with clients where they say, does my landing page design really matter, or can I just get away with good copy? Just the other day, I got an email from someone who said, hey, I signed up for Typeform, the very popular form builder. Why do I need a landing page? I could just send people directly to my Typeform. And I had to explain, well, there's a lot that's missing if you just send someone to a Typeform. It's a part of a landing page, but it's not everything. You can't just send them to the form. Otherwise, we would all be sending people to a Google Doc with a link in it, right? If it's just about the copy, then we wouldn't need landing pages, but that's just not the case. So the design absolutely matters because that's going to help raise the affinity within the visitor's mind and put them at ease and help them take action. And if we put these two examples side by side, I would bet most of us would prefer the one on the right. Just aesthetically, it just looks better. So the design absolutely matters when it comes to your landing pages. Some of the other things that affect the affinity that someone has towards a landing page are things like speed. Make sure your page is loading fast. Notifications. Make sure there's not too many pop-ups or other types of notifications that could distract the visitor or confuse them. Make sure your page is readable and you're using words that are at the right reading level, and you're using fonts that are easy to be read and colors that are easy to read. Make sure the page is easy to use. Go through a usability test to make sure everything works, especially on mobile devices. And the tone of voice should be consistent. If you have a playful tone of voice for your brand, use that throughout your page. Don't automatically get serious as you start asking people to take action. Security, it's a no-brainer, but your page should be secure with an HTTPS in the URL bar using a security certificate. And then just the overall design is going to affect the affinity someone has. And so all of this is going to help someone answer that subconscious question they have of, do I like this page, or do I like the company behind it? Now, if you want to learn more about the framework, because we sort of rushed through just the first three parts, you could check out the entire 7-question landing page framework by going to growthmarketer.co/framework. I'll mention that again at the end. But again, I don't want to focus too much on any one secret because we have so much to cover. Let's look over at the main takeaways, then I'll take some of the questions over there, and then we'll get on to the next secret. So the takeaway here is that instead of focusing on the elements of a landing page, you should focus on the questions that you need to answer for your visitor. I would say, in my opinion, this is the most important takeaway from the entire webinar, because that 7-question framework, we put so much thought and research into it, and we've seen it just completely change the way people think about landing pages and ultimately get results from their landing pages. Let me look at some of these questions here that came in. So we talked about phone numbers. Stuti says, generally with health tech brands, especially cancer care, where people are not really sure what they want, the audience intent is not clear, and they want to understand more about how we can help them. How do you make the LP crisp as well as have just one action? So yeah, I would say using that 7-question framework, I would go through the copy and I would try to see, okay, am I answering every single one of these questions? Am I making it clear with the headline of what the page is about? Am I showing the relevance or the value? Am I focusing on one call to action? Am I showing that there's a high level of trust? So Studi, I would say just focus on answering those questions on the page. Ramakant says usually, and sorry if I'm pronouncing some names wrong. I'm trying my best here, so please don't fault me on that. People get my name wrong all the time. So you say usually in lead generation we need multiple inputs from users like name, email, gender, phone, and so on. So how do we prioritize all the inputs to have a better lead generation? That's a really good question. And what is the maximum input field? So the main thing I would say here is when it comes to form fields, use as few as you possibly can, because there is a lot of research that shows the more form fields you have, the lower your conversions will be. The number one thing I've seen where if you have to have, let's say, 7 form fields, break them up, have a multi-step form. You can do that either by using some type of JavaScript where you have the form field to actually change as people navigate through it, like step 1, step 2, or you could just send people to multiple pages and just sort of pass the data in the URL parameters as they jump from one page to another. But breaking up that form into multiple steps, there's a lot of science into it. There's something called the Zeigarnik effect, which says that once you get someone to start taking action, they're more likely to continue taking action. So that's going to really help get them through that funnel. And then there's a question here, how often should we make changes to landing pages? I would say this really depends on how much traffic you're getting, how much testing you're performing, and we're going to talk about testing later on. Raul says, how important is a responsive landing page as compared to a website optimized for tablets or desktops? Yes, responsive design is key. Mobile is where you should focus. And I know a lot of the examples that I'm showing you are desktop and laptop images, and this is something that's always been on my mind, and I need to be more aware of it. But most traffic these days is mobile traffic, so you don't want to only focus on desktop. You want to really have a mobile first mindset. So I would say even more important than tablets. Personally, we don't optimize that much for tablets just because it's such a small piece of the pie. We try to optimize primarily for mobile and then for desktops and laptops. And Matma says, what are some tools to analyze landing page performance? Yes, I'm going to be sharing a number of tools later on in the presentation. So glad you're asking that question. So stay tuned. Okay, we're going to move on to secret number 3. The secret is you don't need to know how to code to build a landing page. Now, back in the day when I was first learning this stuff 11 years ago, there weren't a lot of landing page tools out there. You had to be a coder, you had to have a developer. But these days, there's a whole bunch of tools that you can use. And so this is just a fraction of the tools that are out there. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I want you to just understand the different categories here, right? So you have 4 different types of tools that I want to make you aware of. First, you have website builders. These are sites like Tilda, Squarespace, Webflow, and Google Sites. Probably the most popular on this list is either Squarespace or Webflow. Webflow is very popular lately, sort of like trying to take WordPress's place. And so this is if you're trying to build an entire website, these are decent platforms, maybe not Google Sites, but Webflow, Squarespace, if you're building an entire site, you can do so without needing to code by using one of these platforms. And then you can build your landing pages in that platform as well. I would say only use that, though, if you plan on using that platform for your entire website. Then you have what are called dedicated builders. These are dedicated landing page tools. The one that I use most often is Unbounce. I am one of the Unbounce agency partners, so we have a little bit of an affiliate connection with Unbounce, but it's a fantastic tool. They have over 14,000 customers, and it's a very easy drag and drop landing page builder. And then there's tools like Instapage, Landingy, and Lead Pages. And so these are really good because they focus on one thing. So they have a lot of features that some of these other tools don't have that let you go really deep into the testing. Like Mamta, you mentioned testing. Like a lot of these tools have the testing capabilities that some of the others don't. Then you have all-in-one builders like ClickFunnels, GetResponse, HubSpot, and Marketo. And these things, they'll help you build landing pages, but you can also run your email marketing and see all your analytics and maybe even run some of your social media efforts out of these tools. So they're sort of like a jack of all trades, master of none, though. And then you have WordPress builders. These are very, very popular. If you're already using WordPress, you don't need to change your entire theme if you want to build a landing page. Now there's these plugins that you can sort of put on top of WordPress. Probably the most popular right now is Elementor. It's a page builder plugin. They have a free one. They have a pro edition. It's my favorite way to build landing pages if I'm going to be working in WordPress. And then there's Thrive Architect, Divi, Beaver Builder, Visual Composer's another one. There's a whole bunch of different ones out there. So whatever tool you end up using, you should try to review it on these different points. Is it easy to use? Does it integrate with the other tools you want to connect it to? Does it have good analytics? Like, is it going to give you the data you need? Can you run an A/B test? Does it have good support? That's always a huge thing that I check. Whenever I'm doing a trial, I'll reach out to support and just see how responsive they are. Templates, do they have a lot of templates that you can start with? Do the pages load quickly? Do they have some of the advanced features you really want to use, like maybe dynamic text replacement, where you can change the text on a page using just by modifying the URL? What are other people saying about it in terms of reviews on Capterra and those types of sites? And ultimately, what's the pricing and what's the budget? So those are some things to look at. If you want my personal opinion, I'm not trying to sell you on Unbounce, but I think it's a great tool. You could actually get a free trial if you go to growthmarketer.co/unbounce. And this is a partner link, but one of the benefits of these types of partner affiliate links is that you get the 14-day free trial, and you also get the 20% off your first 3 months if you decide to stick with Unbounce. So just something to check out at growthmarketer.co/unbounce. So the takeaway here is you don't need to be a designer or a developer or a coder to build landing pages that convert. So don't let that stop you. So we're going to go on to secret number 4. But before I get to this one, let me just check the questions real quick and see where I left off here. So we talked about changing landing pages. We talked about responsive design. Mamta says, what are some tools to analyze? Yes, we talked about that. And I'm going to show you some other tools in a moment. Raul says, these landing page tools, aren't they usually more bloated than custom-made landing pages in terms of page speed? That's something that I hear, but I would say no matter what platform you're using, there's ways to optimize it for speed and performance. And a lot of the tools, especially Unbounce and some of these other dedicated builders, they put a lot of effort into speeding up their pages. That's like one of their main selling points. So I would say I would probably trust an Unbounce page over a client that just has a WordPress site, because I don't necessarily know what the hosting architecture is. Where is their DNS managed? Are they using a CDN? Are you using proper caching plugins and that type of stuff? So a lot of times these dedicated page builders will sort of alleviate all that because they're taking care of it. But absolutely, depending on what you're building, there could be a bloat issue even with WordPress. So it's always something to look at. There's a question here that says, many times landing pages are long. In such, which part are the best to put the CTA, at the beginning or the end? Also, how many CTAs are optimal? Good question. So I always say you need to have a CTA at the top, so somewhere above the fold, and then at the very bottom of the page, because a lot of times people will scroll right to the bottom of the page, and then if there's no way for them to take action, they're going to leave. So you want to have top and bottom, and then depending on the length of the page, I would sort of mix in a few more CTAs in between. You don't want to overdo it though, because if you put a CTA in every section, it's going to look too forced. It's going to look like you're trying to sell something too much. So depending on the length of the page, I would say for us, probably, if it's a standard page, like one of the examples I showed earlier, maybe we'd have like 3 CTAs somewhere on that page. Okay, let's move on to secret number 4, then I'll come back to the questions. So secret number 4 is that if you want to improve your landing pages, you must gather feedback and run tests. And I know this is talked about a lot, but believe it or not, from just the clients we've worked with, we don't see enough testing going on. And this is it's a shame, because testing is really the answer to improving your landing pages. Let me tell you a cool, funny little story. So I call this the how about we method. So what happens is people see, the company sees that there's something wrong with their landing page and they know they need to change something. But instead of doing the proper data analysis, research, all that stuff, usually what happens is the CEO or the owner or the marketing officer comes over and looks at the page and goes, how about we change the button color to red? Or how about we change the headline to this, right? And I call that the how about we method, because it's just somebody's opinion coming in and saying, hey, this is what we should do. And unfortunately, that's not the best approach, because the best approach is to use data and use analytics and to use user feedback to make informed decisions. And so probably the most common way to run a test is to do an A/B test. Although I would say, don't just jump into A/B testing. So A/B testing is where you have your main page, we call that the control, then you create a variant of it, which is identical, but then you change one thing, like maybe the headline or the button or something, or the image, and then you would split the traffic. So if you have 2 visitors, one would go to A, one would go to B. And if you do this enough at the same time, you're eventually going to get a result. And it's going to tell you if one page is performing better or worse than the other, or maybe the results are inconclusive, but it's going to help you determine if that change you made helped improve conversions or not. The problem with A/B testing, though, is to do it right, it's very complicated. You have to set it up properly. You have to have enough traffic. You don't want to run an A/B test and get 10 visitors and then try to make a determination of which page is better based on that, because that's going to give you statistically insignificant results. And I see that happen a lot. So I would say actually stay away from A/B testing early on, unless you know how to do this and unless you have a lot of traffic. Otherwise, I think there's better ways to test a landing page. So I'm going to show you 2 ways to test a landing page that can help you, that are a bit easier than A/B testing. Number 1 is functional testing, and number 2 is usability testing. So with functional testing, what we're trying to answer is the simple question of, does this page work properly? It's very simple. And what we're looking at is the interaction of the page, the speed of the page, and how the page displays in different browsers and devices. And the cool thing about functional testing is you can do this on your own, or you can have your team do this, or your coworkers or your friends help you with this. You don't need to have a formal process here. And we always run a functional test before we build a landing page for a client. So with functional testing, the first thing you want to look at is the interaction elements. And so all I'm talking about here is pull the page up and start clicking on things and push all the buttons and fill out the form and try to call the number, and anything that's clickable, try to click on it. And what you're really trying to do is trying to break the page. You want to see if this page can hold up. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a page where they have a click to call number and you're supposed to be able to click it and then it will start the phone call on a mobile device. And it either doesn't work or the phone number is wrong or something. So make sure you're testing everything. Test the form, test all the different things that could possibly go wrong on the page. Speed, I recommend running a speed test. I'll show you some tools that you can use to do that, just to see how quickly the page is loading. And you want to get that down at least under 3 seconds, especially on mobile. You want these pages to load fast. And then display. What I'm talking about here is making sure the page looks good on a mobile device, on a tablet, on a desktop, and making sure it's cross-browser compatible, so you're not having any issues with Safari versus Chrome versus Firefox. So you want to test it on different devices. And then with usability testing, it's a little more advanced, because here what we're trying to do is get real users to tell us if they can do what they need to do easily and efficiently on the page. And so to run a usability test, I recommend you can either use a tool, and I'll show you one that you can look into, or you can just sit down with someone or do this remote over Skype or Zoom. And just the idea here is you want to get a real user from your target audience, going back to the whole target audience thing, and you want to let them talk out loud as they go through the page. So show them the page and say, hey, what would you do? Talk out loud. And as they go through the page, they might notice things that you didn't notice, because we're so dialed into these pages that we're building. So if you get someone else to help you with it, it really, really helps you step back and see something that you might have not noticed. The key here, though, is when you do a usability test, you don't want to lead them along too much. You don't want to answer questions for them. You want the user to talk out loud. That's really important. So some tools you can use. Webpagetest.org is a really good, very comprehensive speed testing tool that's free. Usability Hub, I think it's usabilityhub.com. That's where you can run some very quick usability tests with real users. I like to use it to run what's called a 5-second test, where I will show someone a page for 5 seconds. I'll stop showing them the page and then ask just a few simple questions like, what was that page about? So you can do that, but it is a paid tool. Hotjar, they have a free plan and a paid plan, but this is a really good analytics tool that complements Google Analytics. So if you're only using Google Analytics, you're only getting the numbers, but what you also need are the qualitative data. You need to know, why are people doing what they're doing on your page. So with Hotjar, you can have heat maps, scroll maps, session recordings where you can see how people are navigating on your page. And so I recommend you install Hotjar or something similar to it. There's a whole bunch of other tools like it. And the free plan is really generous with Hotjar. That's why I like them the best. And then trymyui.com. This is where you can recruit real testers to go through that usability testing process. But again, this is a paid tool. So the takeaway here is you shouldn't just assume that you know what needs to change in order to improve a landing page. You should really gather data, get feedback, and run tests. One other thing I'll say is, of course, there's going to be times where someone wants to give an opinion on a landing page. I do landing page audits or landing page feedback sessions all the time where I'm just giving sort of my first gut instinct on a page. So I'm not saying you should never do that, but when I do those types of audits, I always say, this is just my opinion based on best practices, and to really get the best results, you need to base these decisions in the data. I just don't usually have access to the data when I'm asked to do a landing page review, and I only have a few minutes to do so. So, there's a place for those types of heuristic analysis, but the best type of data you can get is going to come from your analytics tools and from your users and from all these different testing methods that we talked about. Let's look over at the questions, and then we're going to get to the fifth and final secret. So let's see, where did I leave off? We talked about the landing pages being long. Harsh says, how's your experience with Elementor in terms of page loading speed? Any idea how much extra milliseconds it adds with minimal modification? That's a good question. So from my understanding, a lot of the speed and optimization that goes into optimizing an Elementor page actually has very little to do with the page builder. It has more to do with the hosting environment. So if you're using WordPress, no matter what theme or page builder you're using, you need to do the basics. You need to have a good hosting platform. I like WP Engine or Flywheel, which is another company that WP Engine bought. So it's one and the same now. You need to make sure you're using a content delivery network. You want to make sure you're using a caching plugin so that, there's like WP Cache, there's Total Cache, there's a whole bunch of these. You want to use an image optimization plugin, right? And there's all these different plugins and features that you can add to pretty much any hosting environment to speed it up. And what I like about Elementor is it's a very lightweight page builder compared to some of these others. Themes. I'm not going to mention any of these mega themes that I'm sure we all are thinking about on WordPress, but there's a lot of themes out there that are very, very bloated. So I think it has more to do with the hosting environment, though. VJ says, how much copy matters in landing pages? How to keep a ratio of copy versus media? Good question. How about embedding video in landing pages rather than long text information? Yes, so copy is super important. I would say you want to match the amount of copy to the significance of what you're asking someone to do. So what I mean is, if I'm asking someone to buy a boat, I need to really sell that. That's a big request, right? So I'm going to have a much longer page with more copy. Now, if I'm asking someone to download a free lead magnet, what's to lose? I mean, the only risk there is maybe they're afraid that their information is going to be, their email is going to be sold, right? So you could maybe put something in there that says, we're not going to spam you and your information is private, but you don't need to really oversell that. So the best general frame of thinking about this is match the amount of copy to the significance or the significance of the offer, right? So the more complicated or the more complex the offer is, or the more you're asking someone to do, you're probably going to need to back it up with more copy. And video, absolutely. If you have video and it makes sense to use it, use it. Keep it short. Don't have an intro that has your logo for 20 seconds with music. Just get right to it. And the most important thing with video is you always want to end it with a call to action. So I see these videos that just end, but no, you want to say, hey, if this is something you're interested in, click below. A really good example of this is ClickFunnels. Russell Brunson, whether you love him or him, he does a really good job with video. So you could search for pretty much anything ClickFunnels related, and you'll find a video from Russell Brunson, the founder, and he does a really good job of reminding you what the call to action is that he wants you to take in the video. Antonio says, what is the best tool for A/B tests? Can you clarify that, tool? Not sure I understand that question, but we can come back to that. And then Rohit says,
I mean the tool, this tool for A/B testing.
Cool. Yes, sorry about that. Okay, so the best tool for A/B testing. Yes, so Google actually has a free A/B testing tool called Google Optimize. It's relatively new, but if you see how good Google Analytics has gotten over the years, I'm very confident that Google Optimize is on that same trajectory. So I don't think it's there quite yet, but it's a free tool. I would look into it. There are some downsides because it has to be integrated with Google Analytics, and you can only test 2 pages that are connected to the same analytics account, I think. So it is a little bit clunky, but it's a free tool and it's very powerful. Otherwise, what I use most often is Unbounce, and they have a built-in A/B testing tool. And that's the beauty of these dedicated page builders like Unbounce, Instapage, Landingy, Lead Pages. Because these tools are dedicated to just helping you build landing pages. They have it built in. Then there's some WordPress builders like Thrive Themes, that's sort of a conversion-focused page builder that has A/B testing built into their platform as well. And then you could go with one of the bigger guys like, you know, Optimizely, but in my opinion, they're very expensive, and I don't think everyone needs to go there just yet when there's a free option like Google Optimize that's available. And then Rohit says, any WordPress plugins for landing page optimization? Good question. So I'm not a WordPress expert. I know there's a lot of folks out there that specialize in this stuff. I don't know any specific plugins that I would mention for everyone. I would just say categories of plugins. So you want to have an image optimization plugin. You want to have a caching plugin. Caching is where it's going to save that copy of some of the data that's in the background. I think that's probably the easiest way to explain it. You want to have, like, there's a plugin, I think it's called Auto Optimize, but there's a few different ones out there that I would look at. But at a minimum, you want to have a content delivery network, but that's not necessarily a plugin. That's something that you would set up at your hosting level. But I think image optimization is really, really important. Okay, so we are going to move on to the fifth and final secret, and then we'll wrap up with some final questions if there are any remaining questions. So secret number 5 is that the best optimizers, the best landing page optimizers, look at ways to reduce friction and increase motivation for the visitor. Because if you notice everything we've been talking about here, everything, when you think about it, it's either to increase motivation or reduce friction for the visitor. You name it, that's what this is all about. Reduce friction, increase motivation. If you can think of that as sort of a mantra as you build landing pages, it's going to make your life a lot easier. And it took me a long time to figure that out. Like, wow, there's really just a few things we're really trying to do here. And so what I'm going to end up sharing here in this final secret are some e-commerce specific recommendations, because I know a lot of folks on this webinar are focused on e-commerce, and a lot of the stuff I shared is it can apply to both e-commerce and lead gen, but now I want to get very specific into e-commerce. So I'm going to share 3 quick and actionable e-commerce tips to reduce friction and increase motivation. So number 1, what I'm going to do is share a bad example first, and then I'll show you a good example for each of these 3 recommendations. So here's a bad example of using images properly on an e-commerce site. So the goal here is you want to use high quality images that let the shopper see the product detail. And this site, I found this just browsing around trying to look for good examples. And the images here, I mean, they're pretty much doing everything wrong when it comes to the images. The images all look very similar. They're not well lit. They don't really highlight the product. I mean, they might as well have one image here because they all look so similar. And you can't even zoom in when you try to hover or click over the image. It's just it's like 3 images that are almost identical, and you can't even really see the product. A good example is last year I bought some shoes from a company called Allbirds. Very, very comfortable shoes, highly recommended. But the point that I want to make is that they do a really good job of highlighting the product features and showing the visuals. They show not only the pictures where you can zoom in and you see them from different angles, but you also can see photos of the shoes in use. People want to see how is your product or service being used. And so the images shouldn't just be the product shot. They should also be something showing how it's used. So I think Allbirds does a really good job here. The next tip is to make your pricing, shipping, discounts, and return policies clear up front. So this is a bad example of this. This is from I was looking for a customized license plate frame that goes around your license plate because, of course, who wouldn't want a license plate frame that says honk if parts fall off? Come on, it's awesome. But when you look at this, imagine landing on this page. You don't know what their shipping policy is. You don't know what their return policy is. You don't know if there's any discount or promotion going on, and you don't even know what the price is, right? So this is a bad example of how to do this. Now, a good example would be from this company called Evo, where they show what the shipping is. They show it's free shipping on all orders. And I put these red boxes around there, so just to call attention to them. And then they also show it right above the product section. They show what the shipping policy is. And then when you click through, you actually see what their return policy is. So it's very, very clear, and there's no unanswered questions for the visitor. So make it very clear up front. And the third recommendation is to make it easier to complete the checkout process. So I wanted to order a shirt from this organization, my fraternity, and this is the order form. And so imagine if you can imagine what it looks like here on desktop, it's even worse on mobile devices, but it's very complicated. It doesn't tell me what's in my shopping cart. It mentions credit card, but there's nowhere to put my credit card information in just yet. There's a whole bunch of form fields, and there's no way to check out as a guest, right? So it's a bad example. A good example is from a company called Crate and Barrel. They have a very streamlined checkout process where you can clearly see there's 3 options here. You're either, you can continue as a guest, you can use one of the quick methods like PayPal, right? Or you can sign in if you're a returning guest. So it's very easy to make a quick decision just by looking at those buttons. And so this is a very streamlined checkout process. And if you were to go through this process, you'll see it's even better. And that's a good thing to do. I recommend, if you're in e-commerce, go check out your competitors and some of the market leaders and go through their entire checkout process, because you can learn a lot from what they're doing. So the takeaway here is that every major change that you make on your landing pages should either help reduce friction or increase motivation. So a quick recap. Before we get to the recap, let me see if there's any questions, and then we'll take some final questions as we wrap up. So we talked about Elementor. Karen says, isn't an A/B test also a version of how about we try this versus how about we try that? So it's still just 2 different opinions. Yes, in some ways, yes, but I would say you can base it on data. So for instance, give you a quick example. If there's a really good book called Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz, written back in the 1960s. Very good book, by the way, if you can find a copy. It's very hard to get. But he talks about the stages of awareness that someone goes through the buyer's journey. People are unaware, then they are problem aware, then they're solution aware and product aware and most aware and so on. That could be a whole nother presentation, by the way. But the point is, maybe your headline is focused on one of those stages. Maybe you're talking about your product, right? But maybe you're noticing in your conversations with customers is that they don't necessarily care about the product at this point. They care more about the problem. So a good A/B test based on data that you got from talking with your customers is that, hey, let's test a problem-aware headline versus a product-aware headline, right? And so now you're not just using someone's opinion, you're basing it on a conversation or multiple conversations you had with your customers that say, we should change the headline to this based on. So you always want to create a hypothesis. So yeah, I would say if you can avoid just an opinion being the basis of an A/B test and base it on the data, that's usually going to be helpful. VJ says, how much copy matters? I think we talked about that. Yes. We talked about video, we talked about A/B testing tools, WordPress plugins. Harsh says, a free heat map and session replay tool. Excellent. I will definitely check that out. And then we have a question. When we use a third-party tool for building landing pages, won't that impact the SEO of our domain? Good question. I get this question a lot, where can I optimize for both SEO and what we're talking about here is CRO, or conversion rate optimization. And everyone's got a different opinion on this. So my opinion is it's very difficult to optimize for both SEO and CRO, conversion rate optimization and search engine optimization. And so what I recommend is that you keep your pages somewhat separate. You use your landing pages for your dedicated traffic, maybe from Google ads or Facebook ads, or you're doing an email campaign. So instead of sending those people to a page on your regular site, which is optimized for SEO, you're sending them to a page optimized specifically for the conversion action. Because when you think about the goals are very different for SEO versus CRO, because with SEO, you're trying to optimize for keywords and put a lot of content on there and get backlinks. But with CRO, you're trying to optimize for one specific action from a very targeted audience. So quick recap of what we covered. Number one, in secret number one, you should start by knowing the true purpose of a landing page. I showed you that explanation and we broke it down. And number two, the highest converting landing pages focus on answering the questions the visitors have. That's where I showed you the seven question framework, and we covered the first 3 questions. And in my opinion, that's the most important takeaway from this presentation, because those questions will help you in everything you do later on with your landing pages. Number 3, I talked about that you don't need to be a coder to build a landing page, and we talked a lot about different tools you can use. In secret number 4, if you want to improve your landing pages, you need to get feedback and run tests, and I showed you some alternatives to just traditional A/B testing. And then last but not least, in secret number 5, I showed that the most successful landing page optimizers focus on reducing friction and increasing motivation. It's a really good thing to keep in mind, and I showed some e-commerce examples of how you can do that. So again, if you want to get the 7-question landing page framework, head over to growthmarketer.co. It's not com, but growthmarketer.co/framework. You can pick that up. And then if you want to email me with any one-on-one questions, you can email me at Nicholas. That's Nicholas with an H, Nicholas @growthmarketer.co. And with that, I think we are ready to take any additional questions, and then we'll wrap up.
I had a suggestion for you, Nicholas.
Sure.
How about audit of a landing page?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
I'll volunteer our company's page. How about that?
Let me pull it up. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm just actually enabling screen sharing.
Oh, perfect. Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. In the meanwhile, if audience has questions, feel free.
Yes.
I would love to take your input on our page.
Excellent.
I thought so.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Yeah. So,
Go ahead.
So when it comes to a homepage, like I was saying, it's very hard to optimize a homepage based on, the stuff that we were talking about, because you don't know what someone wants when they get to the homepage. They could just, like me, I just want to log into my account, right? Or I want to read your blog. So with a homepage, you can use a lot of the principles we talked about, but not all of them, because to really optimize this for trial starts, for instance, you would want to remove a lot of the other calls to action and the other links, and that just doesn't make sense for a homepage. But what I like here, what you really have going on for you here, is you have the call to action, which stands out. It jumps out from the page because you're using a contrasting color. And so that's really, really helpful. When people ask, like, what's the best color for a call to action button? There's no one specific color that's going to be best, because all of us have different affinities towards different colors. But the bottom line is you want the color to be something that contrasts from the background. And then you have a secondary offer here to schedule a demo. You have the trust logos right here at the top, which is fantastic. And what's cool here is you're using sort of 3 different types of social trust, right? You have the what is that, G2 Crowd, you have Capterra. So these are like very well-known badges that you've earned from these review platforms. Fantastic. Then you have what I would call statistical trust, because you have that line that says trusted by more than 10,000 companies. And I can't tell you how important that is. When I see that, and it just means that over 10,000 people trust Push Engage, then obviously this is a good choice, because a fear that a lot of people have with any type of software is, am I the only one using this, and are they going to go out of business tomorrow? And that's happened to me. I've used tools, and then 3 months later you get an email, oh, we're shutting down. So that's really important, to put on statistical or numeric trust. And then of course you have these logos down here, which people are going to relate to, because obviously I see Domino's, I love Domino's. And so I connect with that right away. Wow, if this is a product that's used by Domino's, then it's definitely going to work for me. So hopefully that.
Any suggestions to improve? That'll be awesome. And I know I kind of triggered a lot of people sharing their landing pages for review. I don't know if you wanted to. I don't know.
Yeah.
Any suggestions?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Depending on how much time we have, for sure.
Yeah.
Shall we go
this
to
is
this
one?
Okay, so this one. So again, it's always hard to give these types of audits on the fly, because I don't know a lot about the traffic source, and what's your target audience, and what are you trying to do, and what do they know about this page before they get there. But my first thoughts are, I would put some type of imagery there to try to answer the affinity question. Do I like it? Because right now, to me, it looks like there's a form and there's a lot of text. I like that you have the call to action above the fold. I like that you have a logo that promotes the connection to the brand, because that's going to help with the trust question. But I would say certainly some type of hero image or some type of graphic. Why choose? Let's see. So proton beam therapy now in India, get expert advice about the therapy. I would maybe simplify the copy. So you have a lot of bullet points. You have a very long headline. I would try to make it shorter and maybe have just 3 bullet points with like little icons, like check boxes. And then for the form, this is a good test you could run. You could do a multi-step or what's called a 2-step form, because a lot of times when someone visits a page and the first thing they see is a form, they sort of put their guard up and they say, uh-oh, this page wants my information. That's it. I'm out of here. So what helps is, imagine if you had the form down below, right? So you don't see it, but you just had a button. And when they click the button, it just scrolls slowly down to the form, right? The form is still on the page. The call to action is still going to be above the fold, which is great. But now you're not only letting people focus more on the headline, and that could be a good place for you to put an image now, because you've freed up a lot of that space. So you're getting them to focus. So it's going to help answer the clarity question. And you're putting their guard down, because they're not going to see the form right away. So that I think would be a really good test for that page.
All right, we have one more.
Sure.
Maybe this is the last one we'll take.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to kind of.
No, this is great.
Okay.
This is the best way to learn this stuff. And okay, so magic bathroom. So first, I don't see a call to action anywhere above the fold. I like that there's a video, but there's no incentive for me to play the video. Give me a headline or something on the video that says, this is why I should play this video, because I don't want to get bogged down watching a 10-minute video, or I don't know how long the video is. So these are the types of things people are going to think about. The logo, I think, is a bit too large compared to the headline. So Magic Bathrooms doesn't necessarily tell me what you do, but Sydney's Leading Bathroom Renovators does tell me what you do. So I would increase the size of the headline. I'd decrease the size of the logo. And whenever you use a statement that is like, we're the best or we're the leading, you got to back it up with something, because people are very skeptical these days. And when they see leading, they're going to say, well, says who? Who says you're leading? So like what you're doing, Ravi, on the Push Engage site with the Capterra and G2, you're using a verified source to give that high performer badge, right? You're not saying we call ourselves a high performer. You're saying, look, we are literally a high performer in this category in 2020. So I would say something similar with Magic Bathrooms. Maybe you can use a quote from a customer, or something, or there's some type of social proof you can put up there. And then I would maybe take all that text and break it down into just bullet points, because there's like a block of text there that people are probably not going to read all the details. So yeah, call to action. But I love that you have a video, and I'm sure if we watch the video, it's going to be very helpful. So overall, I think the design is good. I would just make a few small tweaks there. So yeah.
Awesome, Nicholas. That was awesome. Folks, do we have any more questions? I think we kind of covered them all. So this is awesome. Hey, I want to kind of thank you and say thanks a lot for all the time you took. And it was pretty interesting and a lot of learning even for us. So
yeah,
thanks again.
I know we went through a lot. I'm sorry if it overwhelmed anyone. It's always tough to do, a lot of learning in a short period of time, but I hope it was helpful. Even if you walk away with just 1 or 2 takeaways, that's the idea. Take something you learned and implement it, even if it's just 1 or 2 simple things.
All righty. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.